The vast darkness of space seemed to hold its breath as the Galactic Cooperative faced its most terrifying challenge. Massive gravitational waves rippled through the star systems, threatening to tear apart everything in their path. Scientists from 100 different alien civilizations worked frantically, their most advanced computers smoking and failing with each attempted calculation. Dr. Hyun Park stood in the central research station, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the growing spatial anomaly. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The waves of gravitational distortion moved with an intelligence that defied natural physics, consuming star systems like a hungry beast. The research station buzzed with nervous energy. Alien scientists from various species huddled around their screens, their tentacles, appendages, and mechanical interfaces working overtime. Some looked defeated, others desperate. The anomaly had already consumed 3 minor star systems, and predictions suggested it would continue its destructive path. Kira Roshan, the lead scientific advisor of the Galactic Cooperative, watched the data with increasing panic. Their most advanced predictive models had failed spectacularly. What looked like a simple spatial disturbance had grown into a cosmic nightmare that threatened to destroy everything in its path. "We've tried everything," muttered a vexed scientist, his crystalline body flickering with frustration. "Every computational model, every known scientific approach. Nothing works." Hyun Park noticed something strange in the data. While other scientists looked at the big picture, she focused on the microscopic details. There was a pattern, subtle, almost invisible, but definitely there. The gravitational waves weren't random. They followed a complex but definable sequence. She zoomed in on the holographic display, her fingers moving quickly across the quantum interface. The other scientists barely noticed her, too consumed by their own failed attempts and growing fear. The anomaly continued to grow. Star systems that had existed for millions of years began to warp and twist. Entire planetary systems were being pulled apart, their matter stretched and compressed in ways that defied natural physics. Communication channels across the galaxy were filled with panic. Millions of civilizations watched in horror as the anomaly consumed more and more space. Refugee ships scrambled to escape, but the gravitational waves made navigation nearly impossible. Hyun recognized something that others missed. The anomaly wasn't just a random event, it was behaving almost like a living organism. It adapted, it moved with purpose, it consumed with intention. "It's not just a disturbance," she whispered to herself. "It's something more." The research station's emergency protocols were constantly blaring. Red warning lights flashed, and automated systems predicted complete galactic destruction within weeks. Most scientists had already given up, believing there was no possible solution. But Hyun Park saw something different. Where others saw chaos, she saw a complex puzzle waiting to be solved. Her colleagues from various alien races looked at her with a mixture of desperation and hope. They had tried everything: complex mathematical models, quantum computational analysis, experimental energy manipulations. Nothing had worked. The anomaly continued to grow, consuming more space with each passing hour. Star systems that had existed for billions of years were being torn apart in moments. The destruction was systematic, almost methodical. Most scientific teams had abandoned hope. They were preparing evacuation protocols, trying to save what little they could of their civilizations. But Hyun Park wasn't most scientists. She understood something fundamental that others had missed. Sometimes, the solution isn't found by doing more of the same. Sometimes you need to look at the problem completely differently. The holographic display continued to show the growing threat. Gravitational waves moved with an intelligence that seemed almost alive. It was consuming everything in its path, growing stronger with each star system it destroyed. Kira Roshan approached Hyun, her multifaceted eyes showing a mixture of curiosity and desperation. "Do you see something?" she asked, her translator converting her complex language into simple, human speech. Hyun looked up, a small smile forming on her face. "I think," she said carefully, "we might need to call the humans." The research station went silent. Calling humans was considered a last resort. They were known for being unpredictable, chaotic, and often dangerous. But at this moment, with galactic destruction imminent, they represented the only hope left. Outside the research station's windows, the spatial anomaly continued to grow, a massive, hungry entity, consuming everything in its path. Time was running out and conventional wisdom had completely failed. The communication arrived like a whisper in the vast emptiness of space. J. Kim sat in the standard issue monitoring station, his fingers lazily scrolling through routine deep space communications. Most days were boring, endless streams of scientific data, routine planetary updates, and occasional diplomatic chatter. This transmission was different. The encryption was unlike anything he had seen before. It wasn't just complex, it was desperate. Multiple alien communication protocols were layered together, creating a message that seemed almost frantic in its construction. Most communication systems would have rejected it entirely, but the human, deep space network had a reputation for being more flexible. At first, Jay thought it was a mistake. Alien civilizations rarely requested direct human intervention. They considered humans unpredictable, almost primitive compared to their advanced technological societies. Humans were the new kids on the galactic block, young, aggressive, and completely uninterested in following established protocols. The message repeated. Each transmission carried a sense of urgency that cut through standard communication barriers. Star system coordinates, complex gravitational wave data, and what seemed like a direct plea for help. "We have no idea what to do next," the message essentially said. "So we are calling the humans." J. Kim chuckled. It was almost funny. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, reduced to asking humans for help. Humans who were known for solving problems with duct tape, creative thinking, and a complete disregard for established scientific methods. He forwarded the transmission to the Interstellar Cooperation Department. Within minutes, the quiet monitoring station transformed into a hub of intense activity. Scientists, military strategists, and diplomatic experts began analyzing every pixel of the alien communication. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a quantum physicist known for her unconventional approaches, was the first to recognize the full scope of the problem. The spatial anomaly wasn't just a scientific curiosity, it was an existential threat to multiple civilizations. "They're not asking for a standard rescue," she explained to the assembled team. "They're asking us to do something impossible." The alien transmission included detailed data about a spatial disruption that defied all known physical laws. Gravitational waves were expanding, consuming star systems with a terrifying efficiency. Traditional scientific approaches had failed completely. Jay noticed something interesting in the communication. The alien civilizations weren't just sending a distress signal, they were essentially admitting total defeat. It took enormous humility for technologically advanced species to acknowledge they had no solution. The human team worked quickly. Where alien scientists saw an unsolvable problem, humans saw an interesting challenge. They began mapping the anomaly. Not with traditional scientific methods, but with a combination of creative thinking and experimental technology. Military strategists were brought in. They approached the spatial anomaly like a complex battlefield, looking for weaknesses and potential intervention points. Engineers started modifying existing technology, preparing systems that could potentially interact with the unpredictable gravitational waves. Yoon Lee, a diplomatic advisor with experience in cross-species communication, worked on understanding the nuanced communication from the alien civilizations. The message wasn't just a call for help. It was an admission of vulnerability. "They've exhausted every possible solution," Yoon explained. "We're their absolute last hope." The human response team was small but diverse. Quantum physicists worked alongside deep-sea exploration experts. Military strategists collaborated with experimental engineers. Their approach was chaotic, unpredictable, completely unlike the methodical alien scientific approaches. J. Kim prepared the initial response. It wasn't a formal diplomatic communication, but a simple, direct message that captured the human spirit perfectly. We're on our way, let's see what we can do. The alien civilizations waiting on the other side of that transmission had no idea what was coming. Humans weren't just sending a rescue team, they were sending a group of problem solvers who saw challenges as opportunities, who believed that impossible was just a word invented by people who hadn't tried hard enough. As the human response team prepared their equipment and plotted their course, there was an energy of excitement. This wasn't just a rescue mission. This was a chance to prove once again that human creativity and adaptability could solve problems that seemed insurmountable. The spatial anomaly continued to grow, consuming star systems with relentless efficiency. But now, something new had entered the equation. The humans were coming, and nothing was ever the same once humans decided to solve a problem. Dr. Hyun Park assembled a team that looked more like a random group of adventurers than a serious scientific expedition. There was Jae Kim, the mission commander with a background in experimental space navigation. Beside him stood Min Ho, a retired deep-sea exploration specialist whose weathered hands told stories of impossible underwater challenges. Sarah Rodriguez, a quantum mechanics expert with wild curly hair and even wilder ideas, completed the core team. The Alien Scientific Council watched in disbelief as the humans prepared their approach. Where alien teams would spend months developing complex computational models, these humans seemed to be designing their strategy on the fly, using equipment that looked more like a collection of modified parts than advanced technology. Min Ho spread out a collection of modified marine exploration equipment. Deep-sea exploration tools, originally designed for navigating Earth's most challenging ocean environments, were being repurposed for space exploration. The alien scientist couldn't understand the connection, but Hyun knew exactly what she was doing. Gravitational waves are like ocean currents, she explained, tracing complex patterns on a holographic display. They have flow, resistance, and predictable patterns, if you know how to read them. The team's approach was maddeningly simple. Where alien civilizations had used massive computational systems and complex mathematical models, the humans were preparing to interact with the spatial anomaly using what seemed like intuition and creative problem-solving. Jae Kim modified a series of communication arrays, combining technologies that were never meant to work together. He used military communication systems, experimental quantum entanglement technology, and what looked like modified satellite equipment from 3 different decades. Sarah Rodriguez worked on the theoretical framework. Her calculations didn't follow standard scientific protocols. Instead, she approached the spatial anomaly like a living system, looking for its breathing points, moments of potential vulnerability. The Alien Scientific Council held emergency meetings. Some wanted to stop the humans, believing their approach was too dangerous. Others watched with a mixture of horror and fascination. The humans weren't just preparing to solve the problem, they were reimagining what a solution could look like. Min Ho's deep-sea exploration experience proved crucial. He understood how complex systems behave under extreme pressure. The spatial anomaly wasn't just a scientific problem, it was a dynamic system with its own internal logic. "We're not going to fight it," Hyun explained to the alien representatives. "We're going to understand it, then work with its own internal structure." Their equipment looked like a bizarre collection of modified tools. Experimental quantum sensors sat next to repurposed marine exploration equipment. Communication arrays were combined in ways that defied standard engineering principles. The human team worked with an energy that was completely different from the methodical alien approaches. They argued, laughed, threw out ideas, and rebuilt their strategy multiple times. Where alien scientists saw a problem to be solved through careful calculation, humans saw a complex puzzle waiting to be understood. Jae Kim's navigation strategy was particularly unconventional. Instead of trying to counteract the gravitational waves, he planned to use them, riding their energy like a surfer rides an ocean wave. The alien navigation experts thought he was crazy. But he had studied ocean dynamics, understood how complex systems move and interact. Sarah's quantum calculations suggested something even more radical. The spatial anomaly wasn't just a destructive force, it was potentially a complex living system with its own internal logic. Their strategy wasn't about destruction, but communication and understanding. As they prepared for the mission, the Alien Scientific Council watched in total disbelief. The humans weren't following any established protocol. They were combining technologies, using equipment in ways it was never designed to be used, and approaching the problem with a combination of scientific knowledge and pure creativity. Minho checked the equipment one last time. His hands, scarred from years of deep-sea exploration, moved with a practiced efficiency. He understood something fundamental about complex systems. They always have a weakness, a point of interaction. Hyun Park looked at her team. They were an impossible collection of experts, a space navigator, a quantum physicist, a deep-sea exploration specialist. They didn't look like a traditional scientific team. They looked like a group of problem solvers who refused to accept the word impossible. The spatial anomaly continued to grow outside, consuming star systems with its relentless energy. But something new had entered the equation. The humans were ready, and they were bringing something the alien civilizations had never seen before: pure, unbridled human creativity. The modified research vessel moved unlike any spacecraft in galactic history. Captain J. Kim's hands danced across navigation systems that were part scientific instrument, part creative invention. Outside the ship's reinforced windows, the spatial anomaly loomed, a massive, hungry entity of gravitational energy that had consumed entire star systems. "We're not fighting it," Hyun Park repeated, her voice calm against the background of blaring warning systems. "We're going to understand it." The ship's internal systems were a mess of modified technology. Deep-sea exploration sensors sat next to quantum communication arrays. Experimental gravitational measurement tools were connected through circuits that broke every known engineering protocol. If alien scientists could see inside, they would have called it madness. Minho monitored the external sensors, his fingers moving with the precision of someone who had navigated Earth's most challenging underwater environments. The spatial anomaly wasn't just a scientific problem. It was a living system with its own complex internal structure. Sarah Rodriguez calculated in real time, her quantum computational models changing every millisecond. Where traditional scientists would have spent months developing a single approach, she was creating and discarding strategies with each breath. The first contact point came unexpectedly. As the ship approached the anomaly's outer edge, the gravitational waves didn't push them away, they pulled them closer. Jay's navigation wasn't about resistance, but about understanding and working with the system's internal movements. Alien communication channels erupted in panic. Their monitoring systems showed the human ship doing something impossible. Instead of fighting the gravitational waves, it was riding them. Like a surfer catching a massive ocean wave, the human vessel moved with the anomaly's natural energy. Inside the ship, nothing was stable. Equipment shifted, warning systems blared, but the human team remained focused. They weren't scared, they were excited. This was a problem no one had solved before. Hyun's theory was radical. The spatial anomaly wasn't just a destructive force, it was a complex system seeking balance. Traditional approaches tried to destroy or push back. The human approach was to communicate, to understand, to find the system's internal logic. Minho's deep-sea exploration experience proved crucial. He understood how complex systems behave under extreme pressure. The sensors he had designed could detect subtle changes that would be invisible to standard scientific equipment. "Look," he suddenly said, pointing to a microscopic variation in the gravitational wave pattern. A moment most scientists would have ignored became a crucial piece of information. Sarah's quantum calculations confirmed what Minho had spotted. The anomaly had a rhythm, a breathing point, a moment of vulnerability that could be used to understand its entire structure. Jay navigated the ship with a combination of scientific precision and pure intuition. Where alien navigation systems would have crashed, his approach was fluid, adaptive. He treated the gravitational waves like a complex ocean current, understanding its movement instead of fighting against it. The Alien Scientific Council watched in total disbelief. The human ship wasn't just surviving inside the anomaly, it was gathering information, moving in ways that defied all established scientific understanding. Communication systems picked up strange energy signatures. The anomaly was responding to the human approach. Instead of destruction, there was something that almost looked like communication. Hyun realized they were doing something unprecedented. They weren't just exploring the anomaly, they were engaging with it as a living system. Every movement, every sensor reading was part of a complex dialogue. Hours passed. The human ship moved deeper into the spatial anomaly, gathering information that would revolutionize scientific understanding. Traditional approaches would have been destroyed instantly. The human approach, creative, adaptive, unconventional, was working. Outside the ship, the massive gravitational waves continued to move. But something had changed. Where before they had been destructive, now they seemed almost curious. The human vessel wasn't an invader. It was a participant in a complex cosmic conversation. Sarah's quantum sensors detected something extraordinary. The anomaly wasn't just a random destructive force. It had a structure, a complexity that no previous scientific model had understood. As they moved deeper, Jae, Hyun, Min-ho, and Sarah represented something more than a scientific team. They were problem solvers, people who looked at the impossible and saw an interesting challenge. The spatial anomaly continued to exist, but nothing would be the same again. Humans had entered the equation, and the universe would never be quite as predictable as it had been before. The research station fell silent as the first data streams came through. Kira Roshan, the Alien Council leader, watched in complete disbelief. The human team had not just survived the spatial anomaly, they had done something far more extraordinary. Dr. Hyun Park stood before the galactic representatives, her presentation simple yet revolutionary. Where other scientists would have used complex technical language, she explained their approach with remarkable clarity. "We treated the anomaly like a living system," she said, pointing to the holographic display. The spatial disturbance that had consumed entire star systems now looked almost peaceful, its massive gravitational waves stabilizing. The human approach had been maddeningly simple. Instead of trying to destroy or push back, they had communicated. They had understood the anomaly's internal structure, its complex rhythmic patterns that no previous scientific model had detected. Jae Kim explained the navigation strategy. The alien scientists struggled to understand how they had used gravitational waves like ocean currents, riding the energy instead of fighting against it. Their method broke every known scientific protocol. Min-ho's deep-sea exploration experience had been crucial. He showed how understanding complex systems wasn't about force, but about finding their natural balance. The anomaly wasn't an enemy to be defeated. It was a system to be understood. Sarah Rodriguez presented the quantum computational models. Her calculations revealed something stunning. The spatial anomaly had an internal logic, a complex structure that previous approaches had completely missed. It wasn't random destruction, but a form of cosmic communication. The Galactic Council members looked stunned. Entire civilizations had spent years trying to solve this problem. Massive computational systems had failed. Experimental technologies had been destroyed. And a small human team had solved it by thinking completely differently. "We basically talked to it," Jay said simply, which made absolutely no scientific sense. And yet, the data proved exactly that. The anomaly had not been destroyed. Instead, it had been understood. Its massive gravitational waves now moved with a predictable rhythm, no longer consuming star systems. It was like a wild animal that had been calmed, not through force, but through understanding. Kira Roshan approached, the human team. Her multifaceted alien eyes showed a mixture of respect and wonder. "How?" she asked simply. "How did you do what no one else could?" Hyun smiled. "We didn't see a problem to solve. We saw a puzzle to understand." The recognition came quickly. The human team was invited to become full members of the Galactic Cooperative, not for their technological sophistication, but for their unique approach to problem solving. Scientific journals across multiple civilizations began analyzing the human strategy. It wasn't just a solution to a specific problem. It represented an entirely new way of thinking about complex systems. Minho's sensors, Sarah's quantum calculations, Jay's navigation, and Hyun's overall strategy became required study in scientific academies across the galaxy. Humans had shown that creativity was as important as computational power. The spatial anomaly remained, but now it was understood. It wasn't a threat, but a complex cosmic system with its own internal logic. The human team had done what no one thought possible. They had transformed the unknown into the known. "We just looked at it differently," Hyun told the assembled scientists. Her explanation was frustratingly simple, but the data was impossible to argue with. The galactic communication networks buzzed with the news. A small human team had solved a problem that had threatened multiple civilizations. They had used a combination of intuition, creativity, and scientific understanding that defied traditional approaches. Sarah Rodriguez looked at the final computational models. The anomaly wasn't just stabilized. It had become something that could be studied, understood, potentially even used as a new form of energy or communication. Jay Kim reflected on their journey. They had approached the problem like explorers, not conquerors. They had listened, adapted, and found a solution that no one had seen coming. As the human team received their formal recognition from the Galactic Cooperative, they knew they had done more than solve a scientific problem. They had shown that human creativity, adaptability, and willingness to think differently could solve challenges that seemed impossible. The title of their mission became legendary. "We had no idea what to do next, so we called the humans." And in that moment, the entire galaxy understood that humans were not just a new species in the cosmic community. They were problem solvers, dreamers, people who looked at the impossible and saw an interesting challenge. The spatial anomaly continued to exist, but now it was understood. And everything had changed.